What really gets my dick hard is
So fucking what?
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna play back some of the band's new songs. There'll be no cameras allowed in there. There'll be no video, no bags in there. You can only walk in with paper and a pencil.
We're ready.
Are there any questions?
Some kind of monster. Some kind of monster. Some kind of monster. This monster lives.
Welcome to Metal Up Your Podcast. I'm Ethan Luck.
And I'm Clint Wells.
And here we are at episode number 47, and we are finally getting to what we've talked about for numerous episodes. We're doing Some Kind of Monster, Part 1.
Yeah, we decided to break it up into two episodes because first of all, it's a long-ass documentary. Two, there's just a lot to unpack, you know?
There's a lot of, they cram a lot of stuff in this thing. I mean, it spans like, 700 plus days or something.
It's over 700 days of filming.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's a lot to cover in this thing. I mean, Clint and I both took so many notes on this thing. I mean, it was like I had to pause it so many times to like get quotes and things like that. So yeah, we figured best to split this up into two parts.
So before we get into that, if you're just here for the first time, I don't know where you've been this whole year, but welcome. We're a Metallica podcast. Every week we talk about all things Metallica. We're Metallica nerds.
Yep.
Just like you. Remember what we used to say? We know more than you. We know less than you.
That's true. Very true.
Yeah, that's true. That's kind of the flag we're waving over here. So if you just listening for the first time, welcome aboard. We're going to do some housekeeping crap. A few months ago, we got T-shirts, and a whole bunch of you bought them. And I was going to say, if you've bought a T-shirt, send us a picture of you wearing it, and we'll put it on our socials.
Yes, please do.
I know Sarah has sent in a few things. A few people have sent that, but we sold a bunch of shirts, and I would like to get some pictures of that. So.
Oh, yeah. And Sarah, and we've talked about this before, but she straight up sent us a picture of her wearing it at the show in the UK. It was amazing.
She's representing.
Oh, yeah, very much so. And if you're a new listener to the podcast and you're just kind of joining us and getting on the ride and you haven't even heard us mention T-shirts, there you go. We have shirts for sale. Shoot us an email, metalupyourpodcastshow@gmail.com, and we will let you know how to get one of those.
Yep, they're $20, and that includes the shipping. If you're in the States, if you're out of the States, we'll figure something out. But
yeah,
super easy to do. We're on all the socials. We're on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all that crap. It's pretty fun. We kind of camp out there during the day, and it's mostly us joking with fans about inside jokes, and it's a lot of Hulk Hogan retweeting.
True.
One of the coolest things we're doing is we're doing this contest. We have purchased the Master of Puppets Deluxe box set, and we've also gotten a bunch of other prizes too. So for November, we're doing a contest. If you leave us a positive review on iTunes, your name goes into a master list. We're going to draw 5 names. Grand prize, Master of Puppets Deluxe box set. Then we got a bunch of like cool little like swag stuff. We got a Master of Puppets blanket, a pint set of Ride the Lightning and puppets, a set of shot glasses, and a flask for all you alcoholics out there.
That's right.
And so the deal is we're going to do one of these every month. We're going to probably have 3 to 5 winners every single month. So even if you don't win in November, by leaving us a positive review, you're eligible for any contest we do in the future.
Exactly. And I think we talked about it on the previous episode, but we also, through a kind donation from our new friend Tiffany, who's a new listener to the podcast, hooked us up with a bunch of like very rare, awesome Met Club T-shirts. So those will be part of contest giveaways. So stay tuned for that in future episodes.
You want to tell them about the old Patreon?
I do. All that stuff Clint just mentioned, and getting the box set and the blanket and all that stuff, all that is made possible by the people that support the show financially through a site called Patreon. And it is patreon.com/metalupyourpodcast. That is spelled Patreon. And it's a way for you to give back to the show, just to financially support it in any way you'd like, from $1 all the way up to $5 million. And the coolest part about it, which we've talked about a bunch, which is going to be very soon, you're going to hear it, or patrons are going to hear it, is that if you donate $5 or more, you get access to our Metallica cover EP.
Yeah, so, Ethan and I have taken 6 Metallica songs, well 7 really, because you're going to get the Unnamed Feeling, and we've sort of reimagined them. A lot of Ethan's are this kind of cool outlaw, kind of dark country shit, and all mine are real brooding, dark acoustic treatment. So You're going to get all that stuff. We're going to do Patreon-specific contests in the future where we give all of our patrons a bunch of gifts. So what other podcast, Ethan, gives away all these goddamn gifts so generously like we do? I don't think any do.
I don't know. I mean, well, our buddy Ryan over there at Speaking of Story, he's giving away the Kill 'Em All box set, and if he hasn't already, I'm not sure when his deadline is, but we're kind of the Santa Clauses of the Metallica world here, and we're giving away a lot of shit.
I like to think of me and you like in one Santa Claus outfit, but both of it like a two-headed like monster Santa Claus.
That or like I'm the legs and you're the arms and head or something.
Yeah,
we're kind of like the Voltron of Santa Claus.
Oh yeah, yeah. By day we're just normal touring musicians. By night we transform into a two-headed monster Claus.
Exactly.
Hey, let's get into this.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry I cut you off.
Were we both about to say the same exact thing?
Let's get into some fucking emails.
Emails. Ethan, you want to start us off on the emails?
Would I? All right, the first email is from Travis. He says, Metallica have in fact covered Iron Maiden. On the Hardwired Deluxe Edition, there's a cover of Remember Tomorrow. Very cool stuff.
Okay, listen, everyone.
Yeah, listen up. Remember when we said we know more than you, we know less than you? You know what? Sometimes we're going to skip some things on accident, or maybe we just, we're absent-minded one night and we forget. I don't know if this is on par with the Outlaw Torn, but it's getting there. We've gotten so many emails and tweets and comments about...
The Outlaw Torn is just so much more egregious than us forgetting about the song, but we received a lot of feedback, and we now definitely know that Iron Maiden has been covered by our beloved Metallica. We appreciate you all setting it right. Let's never speak of it again.
True. You know what? Speaking of, the Metallica never covered the Misfits. Actually, they did. Die, my darling.
Well, I hope no one broke their goddamn pelvises rushing to the laptop to set us right on that. It seemed like a flurry of email.
Yeah.
Thanks, Travis. We really do appreciate it. We really don't know everything. We're just like you guys, kind of excited about this band. We just love this fucking band.
Of course, yeah. You know what?
Yeah.
You know what I was going to say is one thing that the onslaught of Iron Maiden cover emails did for me is it really made me want to dive way deeper into that deluxe edition of Hardwired, because when it came out, like I kind of skimmed through the songs, but I was just mostly excited about the new originals, and so I haven't really spent much time with that.
I haven't either.
That second disc, so we'll do an episode on that whole thing at some point. But yeah, so I guess if there's a positive to come out of it, it's that.
Well, we do appreciate it. We're mostly just ribbing you guys. Anytime you guys want to write in and hang with us and make us better and more knowledgeable fans, we are gracious. So our next email is from Adriel Vincent, who says, I just want to say thanks for this awesome podcast series. It's pretty rare that I find people whose commentary I agree with, but I agree with pretty much every point you guys make. Hopefully not with the Iron Maiden point that we made on the last episode.
Yeah.
He says, it's really cool to hear other people talk about Metallica with as much passion as I do. No one around me is a fan, so I never get to hear other perspectives on songs or albums. It's cool to hear what other people think about Metallica's amazing music, especially as a young fan who has only been listening for about a year.
Wow, only a year.
Dude, Adriel, you've got such a fun ride ahead of you.
Welcome to the Metallica world, my friend.
Welcome to Metallica world, wacky Metallica world.
It's so wacky. It gets real wacky around 2003.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
No joke.
Well, thanks for that email, man. The next email is from Junebug Fugit.
Fugit.
I know, but I like saying Fugit because it's...
Okay.
So from Junebug Fuckit, it says, hey guys, I enjoyed your Garage Days Revisited episode. Great job as always. Read an interview with Lars around this time that Garage Inc., and they said that they like to clean the slate and pay tribute to their influences after every 3 albums. They did it with Garage Days Revisited after Kill, Ride, and Puppets. Then we got Garage Inc. after Justice the Black Album and the Load albums. So technically, we're due for another trip around the garage after there's a Saint Anger, Death Magnetic, and Hardwired. If the next release is another Garage Days, what would you guys like to see? Who would you guys like to see on the album? Would you guys like to see them pay another tribute to the bands that influenced them in the early days, or would you like to see them cover some newer bands that have influenced them? As always, keep up the good work, Junebug Fugit. That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing them do like a Soundgarden tune from Bad Motorfinger.
Yeah, I think that.
Like, what if they did Jesus Christ Pose or something? That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, or I could see him doing some like Alice in Chains stuff. I don't know. I think that's kind of the newer of the artists I would like to personally hear them cover. I do like their philosophy of, hey, you guys check this out. We're going to cover it. These are some of the bands that influence us. But I mean, they gave us that with Garage Days. They more than gave us that with Garage Inc. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd like maybe a mix of some other maybe kind of heavy 90s stuff that they were influenced by / old school stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'd rather just hear original new tunes, to be honest with you.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not a huge fan of any band really doing big cover collections.
I mean, I like them if they're done well. I think Garage Inc. was done very well, and it sounds good.
Yeah, Garage Inc. is great. And obviously, if you heard our last episode, we loved the 598 EP, but
yeah.
When I think about moving forward with Metallica, I don't have a lot of space occupied for them to camp out in covers world.
Well, and let's be honest. I mean, they're getting older and stuff. It's like, you know, hopefully they're not going to take another 8 years to make another album. If that much time goes by and all we get is a cover album, it's going to be like, oh, come on, guys. But right. But we'll see. You know, I mean, if they put out something, of course we'll check it out and we'll probably dig it. But I, like Clint, would rather hear another record of originals sometime in the near future.
Well, think about it. Those two covers albums came out in a time in their career where there was a lot of pressure to get some new material out. They're beyond that.
Yeah, I think
they're going to do whatever. Obviously, they took them 8 years to get from Death Magnetic to Hardwired, and blah blah blah. We know they did a bunch of shit in between. They made a movie, but I'm just saying, there's not as much pressure to get material out.
Yeah, totally.
But it is an interesting thought experiment.
It is. Thank you for the email, Junebug.
Thanks, Junebug. Ian Koretzman writes, "Hey fellas, haven't written in a while. Just wanted to say I appreciate the podcast and I'm very much enjoying the content. Just watched Cunning Stunts and it was great. I love diving into old and live Metallica performances. It's great to look back and see what things have changed and what they've kept in their live performances. Thanks again for all you do for the Metallica community. Don't stop. Your brother in metal, Ian Koretzman." Thanks, dude.
Don't stop podcasting. Did we just cross over into a Journey podcast?
I think we've been a Journey podcast this whole time, actually.
This next episode is about their current lead singer, who's they found on YouTube.
What's that guy's name? That guy's name is also Steve, isn't it?
I have no idea. Any Journey fans out there? Actually, don't let us know. It's fine. We can look it up if we were.
No. Any Journey fans out there? We'll wait. We'll wait for the answer. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Any Journey fans out there?
Cricket.
Okay. Oh, wait. This isn't a call-in show.
Oh, right. Shit. Ian, thank you for the email, and thank you for getting involved and watching things like Cunning Stunts if you haven't seen already, or if you're rewatching it. Yeah, it's cool to dive in deep like we've been doing.
Well, we get messages every week with whatever current thing we're talking about, and people are always kind of jumping into whatever the subject is. So it's exciting knowing that a bunch of our listeners are kind of on the same parts of the ride that we're on.
Yes, exactly.
And I've been doing that with I've been listening to Single Podcast Theory, our friends' Pearl Jam podcast, and like whatever record they're talking about, I find myself listening to it. So I understand how that can be kind of contagious.
Oh, it definitely can. I mean, obviously we have to do it for this show, but even after we release an episode on a certain record, like I find myself listening to that record a bunch that week, even after we've already recorded it. So yeah, it's a good it's good fun over here.
All right, our last email.
It's from Joe B. Hey guys, I was so excited to see the topic of this week's episode and wanted to share some pictures of my own copy of this record.
Oh, and she sent us like pictures of her vinyl of the 598 EP.
Yes, totally. She says, a couple years ago, I was killing time in my local record store before meeting up with a friend. I saw this album, stared at it, flipped it over, and was wondering what it was for a few seconds. The front of the picture disc wasn't aligned with the cutout sleeve, so it looked like a surrealist jumble of 8 heads and a lot of hair, she says.
Or you were on a lot of drugs, either one. Or both.
I think you were, it's probably a bit of both.
Maybe both, yeah.
I froze and I realized what I was holding. Having read it was out of print as a teen in the 90s made me think I'd never see it in person, and I'd never even tried searching for it. Not knowing about Discogs, which is a very cool site, by the way, I'll talk about that in a second. I realized it's not terribly hard to get one's hand on a copy, but at the time stumbling upon this in person in a random shop felt like everything in the universe had aligned. It was truly a special moment, and I'll remember it for a long time. I hope you're both well. Keep on kicking ass. Well, first of all, it is very, very exciting to be thumbing through a record store in a certain bin and all of a sudden see something that, might be out of print, and you could, probably find it online easily, but it's in your hands. It's like that old school way of searching for records.
No, it's the Great Hunt. I mean, the band that my country band that I travel with, a few of us are big vinyl freaks, and we go to record stores every weekend. And it's shit. We're all pretty heavy into Discogs as well. If you guys don't know about Discogs, it's DISCOGS, and it's a place where you can sort of keep track of your collection, but you can also peruse other people's collections, and it's a big marketplace of records. It's a really fucking awesome site.
I've bought like kind of rare vinyl through Discogs, like from some kid in Japan or something. It's
too.
really cool.
And that's going to be the future of buying physical media, because what I'm seeing as I tour the country every year round and round is that these places are closing. So.
Right,
exactly. There's nothing like fucking feeling that in your hands when you're just looking through like a just-in, the just-in bins. Those are always the things I go to first. The new arrivals, if they haven't sorted yet, like that no one's really picked through. Mm-hmm. There may be some gems in there no one's grabbed.
Totally, man.
That's cool. I've actually, out of all my record store, I mean, I've been into vinyl for about 12 or 13 years. I've never seen Garage Days revisited. In the wild, as they say. In the wild,
yeah. It's a tough thing. I mean, even sometimes finding, early pressings of any of the other early records, Lightning or Puppets and stuff, like when you see them, it's like, oh, shit. I am proud to say my Lightning, my Puppets, and my Justice are all like old 80s pressings.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. Of course, like, when you get like the reissues, the 180 gram vinyl, that's always fun, a good thing to have too. Like some of I have like the Black Album on 180 gram vinyl. Kill 'Em All, I have the remastered version, things like that.
Yeah, all mine are the blackened recordings reissues from like 2014, I think.
Okay, nice.
So, and I've seen people complain about the quality. Like, I can't tell. I mean, I've got a nice record player. They sound fine to me.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Turn them up loud, there's no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool, thanks, Joe. Good to hear from you. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the emails.
Well, what do you say we get into some facts about Some Kind of Monster?
Yeah, we're going to talk. I think this is going to take up a little more time too than maybe it normally does, because there's a lot of interesting subtext swirling around this film. And then we're going to kind of talk through the film a little bit. We're going to insert some clips about what we're talking about, give you some context. But yeah, let's kind of just talk through some of the facts, and I think it's going to spur a lot of other conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I 100% will. Well, first off, this was released January 24th, 2004 at the Sundance Film Festival, and the very next day was released in theaters on January 25th of 2004. They did a re-release November 20th, 2014 on Blu-ray, and I think we've mentioned this on the show before, that they released it the same week that Craig Kilborn was going off the air, and Metallica played every one of his shows that week.
Well, and I think they were promoting Through the Never also.
They were, yeah.
So it was coinciding with that, because the Blu-ray also comes with that 25-minute kind of like, follow-up segment. They call it This Monster Lives.
Yeah.
The 10th anniversary.
Totally. One thing that was really funny, if anyone's seen all those shows of Craig Kilborn.
Craig Kilborn.
Craig Ferguson, sorry. They play a different song each night and stuff, but Craig Ferguson totally gives them shit for re-releasing it on Blu-ray. He's like, says something like, "Why would you want to put this out again?"
Right.
But anyway, so moving on, it was directed and produced by Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky. And these dudes, they did a 1994 documentary about the West Memphis 3 called Paradise Lost, which was the first film that Metallica approved their music to be used in.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder what it really was about that they felt like they was cool enough to sort of lend their licensing to.
Probably cool. I mean, probably they thought it was probably cool enough, and maybe they were involved in the story, and maybe they felt like, we're on the side of these dudes, that they should be free, and they kind of had a passion for that film and that project.
Right.
But that was the documentary these guys made that led them to approach Metallica to do as they say, a no holds barred look at the band.
Well, and speaking of Joe Berlinger or Berlinger. I just want to say real quick, he wrote a book about the making of the film called This Monster Lives. And I haven't read it in a few years, but it was one of my favorite Metallica reads. I think I'm going to read it again before we do part 2 next week. But
okay.
I encourage anyone to check it out. It's really kind of cool behind the scenes of a documentary that itself is behind. It's super meta, bro.
So metal.
Oh my God, it's so fucking deep.
Well, the film did pretty well at the box office. It made over $2 million, which is cool.
Yeah, that's not great though. That's actually they lost money because did you know that Metallica themselves actually purchased the rights from Elektra
for the film?
Yeah, well, so originally the film was supposed to just be 2 60-minute infomercials for Metallica's new record that they were going to play like late night as kind of a new a new way to try to sell a record. And what happened was Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky showed up, and Jason quits the band, and they're like, "Oh shit." Q Prime brings Phil in, and they're like, "Oh shit!" So they just decide to keep filming. So at some point, because as we mentioned earlier, they filmed for like 715 days.
Yeah, it was crazy.
At some point in the middle of that, Elektra is like, "Hey guys, this is getting really expensive. We want to at one point, dude, Elektra wanted to make a reality series out of it."
Gosh, that would have been lower than they were already at.
Oh my God, I'm so glad that didn't happen. But thank goodness the band and the filmmakers kind of like they had a vision for it being like a film, like a real film. So Metallica bought the rights from Elektra for $4.3 million. So they actually
still lost money in the box office.
Yeah, $2 million's pretty not great. I mean, I guess it's okay for like an indie documentary.
Yeah. But the amount of money they spent on it, and then and it's interesting. Like when we talk about them losing money on this thing, and then you fast forward to them hiring Rob and then going over all the legal stuff about what ownership he has, and they even say, "So if this film loses money, that's on these three guys, not you."
Right.
And it did,
because he wasn't having to assume the risk.
Exactly.
But I can't help but thinking, and I don't want to jump ahead here, but maybe they would have saved some goddamn money if they hadn't been paying old Phil Big Cosby sweatered towel 40 fucking grand a month.
40 grand a month.
40 grand a month.
A month. That's insane. Gosh, I could pay my house off in 2.5 months.
Oh my God. That is expensive.
That's so expensive. But he was like, I think he went, I'm pretty sure he went because he's from Kansas City, and he was like doing therapy for like the Kansas City Chiefs or something.
Well, here's what's interesting though. Did you know that in the mid-90s, he had to surrender his therapy license to the Kansas Behavioral Sciences Regulatory Board?
I did not know that.
And do you know why? Because of he was quote unquote cited for a litany of violations, including continuing treatment when it was not beneficial to the client. Does that ring a bell? About old Phil Tao?
Old Phil selling his house in Kansas City? Well, I haven't said we're moving to San Francisco.
Exactly. And James is going, man, I think we need to like be done. And Phil's like, well, I still think we have trust issues to work out. Like,
oh my
God
gosh.
damn, Phil.
He's just hanging on. Dude, that guy made a killing off Metallica.
He's like, look, James, I'm saying this because I really care about you. I really do think I have a few more $40,000 checks to cash. I really do. It's
in your best interest, though.
No, it's for you. I have a few more terrible yellow sweaters to buy.
I have a few terrible lyrics to write.
Here's another thing that I don't understand about this guy that's making that bank. Why does he look like such slobby shit? Like, why can't he look like... I want him walking in like 007 with a watch that like, flushes the toilet and turns into a hologram of like Elvis. But he's kind of like disheveled and frumpy.
It's kind of like a dude that like somehow talked his way into it. Like how did he convince Q Prime management to get on board with that? I don't, we'll get into all the more Philisms as we go along with this, but let's get through the facts first so we don't get off track here.
Okay, where are we at on the facts?
I have no idea. Here's a little fact. How the band felt about this documentary being made and after it was done. Lars was quoted as saying, "We were at a crossroads. We've been really good at being able to compartmentalize a lot of this stuff, suppress it with drinking or other." Why can't I pronounce words tonight?
Extravagances.
Extravagances. Mm-hmm. Extravagances. This was the first time we had to talk to each other, get to know each other, and work stuff out. The cameras were there catching all of it. So I mean, like, and even on that Craig Ferguson show, they talk about like, you know what, this is what happened back then. This is the low point we were at, and we filmed it, and it's just it's a part of our history that needed to happen that we so happened to capture on film.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we heard from a lot of our listeners is maybe one of the revelations about Saint Anger a few weeks ago. This thing kept coming up that they had to make Saint Anger, or they wouldn't have, they wouldn't have been able to continue as a band, right? I think
Right.
it's really less about the record and actually more about the film. I think the film is really what kept them alive, because Lars even went on to say, he talked about how, the fact that the cameras were there, it helped keep them on track. And he talks about how having another set of eyes and ears there kind of made everyone mind their P's and Q's a little more. And he's even quoted saying, I think it kept the whole thing from derailing, talking about the film being made.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so it's this weird sort of like, I don't know, it's sort of like an axiom, because on one hand, it's like they're so transparent, right? Like it's like them super raw. On the other hand, it's, you're not going to act naturally when you're being when you're being recorded. It's just not going to happen.
No.
So I do think they were being honest and raw, but you've also kind of got this veneer of posturing because they're on camera.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I'm saying? It's such a strange thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, Hetfield talks about it in the documentary. Like especially when he comes back from rehab, he's like, "Oh, the cameras are still here," and my friend the boom.
Yeah.
On one end, maybe it did keep him kind of on track from not derailing. At the same time, I mean, there's plenty of times in this film you see, especially James, being so uncomfortable with those cameras rolling.
Well, it's a lot of him being uncomfortable with the cameras. It's a lot of him being uncomfortable with the material they're writing, him being uncomfortable with Lars and the band and himself.
Phil's lyrics.
Well, Phil hands him that little note, and James just looks at it, and then he turns the chair away.
I know, it's amazing.
There's a close-up of the lyrics that he gives to James. I didn't pause it to read them, but they're just
I'm sure it's incredible.
It's just all therapy lyrics,
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get into Phil a little bit more later, but like, it is cool that at a certain point, they were kind of sick of him. It was time to move on from Phil. But as much as I hate to admit it, like, he did have a good hand in like keeping those guys like, on track and working out their shit.
Well, James described Phil in the documentary as an angel. He says
he did.
Phil's like an angel sent to me, and
an expensive ass angel.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can't afford a $40,000 a month angel.
If I was paying someone $40,000 a month to be my therapist, I would make him dress like an angel every week.
Oh my God, I would make them do lots of uncouth things if I'm paying them $40,000.
Phil, your angel wings are dirty. Go get them dry cleaned right now out of your paycheck, and come back and we'll talk about shit.
$40,000, good God.
I know, it's insane.
But there was a lot to be said about that, and I did see an interesting interview with James. This is later, I think, when they were doing press for the Blu-ray, and he's talking about that scene that we'll get to here shortly, where that's a kind of awkward scene where Phil's sort of outstaying his welcome, as he was, as he has a history of doing. And James says, he's like, man, Phil has issues too. Like, Phil has abandonment issues that were coming out when he thought we were abandoning him. And it's just interesting to see, like, Chuck Klosterman had a pretty interesting quote about this, where he talks about, like, everyone involved in the making of this movie was clearly not okay. Like,
right.
Because Joe Berlinger and the other cat, Bruce Sinofsky, who were partners, they were like starting to come apart too as a partnership.
I'm sure they were.
Well, they were. It's a fact.
No. But I mean, like, how could you not? I mean, being in that environment,
Well, I think they just worked together a lot, and they had ego problems between them. Obviously, Phil's all weirded out with Phil. Even Bob's kind of fucked up in this, Oh,
I mean, there's points where Bob's in the therapy sessions, like, spilling his heart, or like kind of fighting back with Phil. He's like, I'm just sick of this shit. Like when he's posting all the little notes around the studio and stuff.
Yeah. Like, they're all just so lost and fucked up. It's such a fascinating film.
It is.
Should we? We're going to sort of dissect the Dave Mustaine scene later, because it's probably the most ludicrous part of the film to me. But
it's pretty.
But there's drama about it, right? Because Dave didn't give permission for them to use it, or
Yeah. There's a couple of Mustaine facts that obviously you don't see in the documentary, but like, one of the most interesting to me being is that the Mustaine and Lars meeting was very tense and stuff because it was only 2 days after 9/11, and it was also Dave's 40th birthday.
Wow. So they're kind of big events. One obviously collective, and one very personal.
Right. Exactly.
Ooh, did you just?
That's a Tecate because I'm in Mexico City.
Ka-ching.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously it's uncomfortable on all accounts. I mean, they haven't really like gotten to talk about this stuff ever. James isn't there for him to talk with, talk about the stuff with. Yeah, he basically the producers reached out to Dave Mustaine for his approval, including footage of his 2001 meeting with Lars. And even though Mustaine denied, he didn't want it in there originally, but he had earlier signed a release form giving the band and the producers rights to use the footage. So I guess kind of his mistake if he didn't want it in there. But and then he later, this is crazy, he later claimed that it marked the final betrayal and that he's now given up hope to ever fully reconciling with his former bandmates.
So that's classic dramatic Dave.
That's so Dave.
Hello, final betrayal.
Well, of course, we all know that like in 2010 they went on to, they were fine. They did the big 4 shows and there were hugs given and I think they're maybe not like BFFs now, but I think they squashed a lot of that past.
Well, it's clear that it wasn't the final betrayal.
The final betrayal.
Yeah, that does sound like a Queensryche song or something, doesn't it?
It does. Operation Mindcrime. Operation Mindcrime Part 5. I've never gotten into Queensryche, by the way.
I think Silent Lucidity kicks ass. That's it. That's all I know.
I used to think it kicked ass, and I've heard it in recent weeks, and I was like, my first thought was like, God, this is ridiculous.
Someone wrote us an email this week that was like, obviously you guys need to brush up on your new wave of British heavy metal. And I'm like, dude, I'm 34 years old. I've checked it out. I don't like it.
There's a lot of stuff I do like.
I mean...
Listen, to me, in the new wave of British heavy metal, like Iron Maiden is king. So,
oh, of course, Iron Maiden, but they're beyond that.
Yeah, for sure.
He meant us talking about not really knowing Killing Joke or Holocaust or, like I don't own Diamond Head records. Sorry, I own Metallica records.
I think Diamond Head is awesome. I think they've got a lot of great songs, like clearly awesome enough for Metallica to cover. But what I've listened to of Killing Joke and stuff, like there's cool stuff, but it's just not my cup of tea, man.
Yeah, dude, let's just face it. We're not really fans of it. I'm not. I think it's great. I think it's fine, but I'm not buying the records.
I did like me some Judas Priest.
I like Judas Priest too. I don't own any of their records.
Screaming for Vengeance is a really good one.
All right, make me a mixtape.
I'll make you a mix. It's going to include all the songs from Screaming for Vengeance
in sequence.
No, it'll be out of order for sure. Excuse me. Where were we here? We were talking about Mustaine.
Well, we're kind of wrapping up this the Mustaine thing. So he said it's the final betrayal. Obviously, they went on to hang out later, and there was like that video of them, the Big 4 footage, and they're hugging and shit. And there's footage of them hugging. Yeah,
oh yeah. There's a lot of hugging happening.
But it did get kind of ugly though after that because Lars had that quote where he said something like, "Put these facts down. He was in our band for a year. He never played on a Metallica record, and it was 22 years ago. It's pretty absurd that it can still be that big of a deal." And I think
that was before the Big 4 shows happened.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So it's after the documentary,
but he is right.
The Big 4 thing. Yeah, he's right. He even says it in the documentary, and we're getting ahead of ourselves. But he essentially says that in the documentary.
Yeah.
You know what? Just speaking of the Big 4, which we're going to do a whole episode on that show, the Bulgaria show, but
yeah.
It is kind of ironic that it does like totally downpour on Megadeth's set.
I have watched all the footage from those shows, multiple shows they did, and I mean I got to say, I mean Megadeth is definitely the most technically talented band on that stage, and I'm a Megadeth fan, and but yeah, rain or shine, man, they still killed it.
But like you can just see Dave kind of taking it personally.
Everyone else got sunshine.
Well, even God hates me. Hello, God. Like, come on, Dave. You know what, though? Speaking of old Dave Mustaine, should we take a trip to the Poetry Corner?
You know what? I've always heard that Paw Paw is a big Megadeth fan, especially the Countdown to Extinction record. Isn't that right?
Let's go check out the Poetry Corner and see what's up.
Okay.
Here is Poetry with Paw Paw.
Welcome back to the Poetry Corner. We're plumb tickled to have you. Today I'm gonna be reading Sweating Bullets by David Mustaine. Hello me, meet the real me, and my misfit's way of life. A dark black past is my most valued possession. Well, hindsight's always 50-50, but looking back it's still a bit fuzzy. Speak of mutually assured destruction, nice story. Tell it to the Reader's Digest. Feeling paranoid, true enemy or false friend? Anxiety's attacking me and my air's getting thin. My hair's getting thin too. I'm in trouble for the things I haven't got to yet. I'm chomping at the bit and my palms are getting wet, sweating bullets. Hello me, it's me again, Paw Paw. You can subdue, but never taunt me. It gives me a migraine headache. Sinking down to your level, yeah, just keep on thinking it's my fault. And stay an inch or two out of kicking distance, mankind has got to know his limitations. Feeling claustrophobic, like the walls are closing in. Bloodstains on my hands and I don't know where I've been. I'm in trouble for the things I ain't got to yet. I'm sharpening the axe and my palms are getting wet, sweating bullets. Well, me, it's nice talking to myself, a credit to dementia. Someday you too will know my pain and smile its black-toothed grin. If the war inside my head won't take a day off, I'll be dead. My icy fingers claw your back, here I come again. Feeling paranoid, true enemy or false friend? Anxiety's attacking me and my air is getting thin. Feeling claustrophobic, like the walls are closing in. Bloodstains on my hands and I don't know where it is that I've been. Once you committed me, now you've acquitted me, claiming validity for your stupidity. I'm chomping at the bit, I'm sharpening the axe, here I come again. Whoa, Nelly, sweating bullets. Thanks for coming back to the Poetry Corner. We'll see you next time here.
Oh my God, Sweating Bullets.
Wow, Sweating Bullets of all songs. Okay, that's interesting. Maybe I don't know. Maybe he listens to the show and knows that you do your Dave impression and thought maybe you would enjoy that more than another song.
Yeah, well, I'm tickled to death, as he says, and man, just really touched by that. I couldn't tell, at first I was like, is this Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven? Oh, no, wait, this is Sweating Bullets.
By Sir David Mustaine.
All right, are we ready to sort of walk through this film a little bit?
Yeah, definitely.
So, if you will, take an audio journey with us through the film, Some Kind of Monster. Maybe you watched it recently, maybe you're going to watch it tonight with the old family, with a big old bowl of popcorn.
Popcorn.
With a big old bowl of popcorn. But anyway, we invite you to go on the journey with us. We're going to sort of insert some clips here so we can sort of contextualize some of where we're at. But
yeah,
I did make this note. It's interesting. So the film kind of starts out with the sort of title cards that sort of catch you up on shit.
Right.
And it struck me that it seems like they were definitely aware that people who weren't Metallica fans were going to watch this.
Yeah.
Because the title cards say, the heavy metal band Metallica has sold over 90 million albums since 1981. They were the top North American draw throughout the 90s. Like, it's immediately sort of like, okay, we want this to be for more than just diehards.
Yeah, I think so. I think in addition to that, they probably, I would guess, they when they edited this thing, they probably thought of that intro afterwards, and I think in a way it also just really drills it in deep that they're at their lowest point. So you're getting a good contrast of the two heights of them as people in a band.
Right. Well, it's like the biggest band you can imagine at a super low point.
Yes.
It sort of does kind of immediately create drama.
Oh yeah, I mean, having watched this thing probably, I don't know, 15 or 20 times since it's come out, I still look at that and go, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it just sort of gets you ready for it.
Oh yeah.
And of course, so it starts with, it says in the spring of 2003, journalists were invited to preview Metallica's first album in 5 years. And so you're kind of seeing all these journalists file in, and it's so
uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable because you know what's coming and you know it's not good. Although it is frantic, and frantic's pretty good, but they play frantic.
Yeah.
In the control room, they just play it over the speakers. But it's like just knowing about Saint Anger. It's like knowing the monsters in the closet.
Yes, exactly. Well, I mean, like the look on people's faces. There's one guy that's kind of bobbing his head, like he looks like he's trying a little too hard to like.
But he on the outside he's like, okay. On the inside he's like, what is this?
This is not my Metallica.
Oh
yeah,
man,
I'm sure that because I mean those journalists. I mean, I'd imagine most of them were fans. I don't think they would let in people that were just like, yeah, my bosses make me do this bullshit thing on your band. So. They're probably walking in there going, oh my God, we're about to hear the new Metallica record. The first thing they've put out since Load, Reload and Garage Inc. And
well, think about this. Why, think about mine and yours first reaction to it, right? You threw it out the window. I took it out kind of embarrassed and mortified. Why would their reaction was probably pretty similar. Like horror,
but they'll probably also keep their cool a little bit too. Like they're sitting there in front of people,
and I would have too if I'd have been in their studio. I probably would have even been like, "This is awesome,
dude! You guys are fucking great,
Grammy Award winning, Saint Anger.
This is your best record ever.
This is better than
this is better than Reload.
This is better than Unload. Unload sucks.
Unload sucks.
By the way, Lars, Unload sucks."
You haven't made that record yet, but it sucks.
And the editing's cool. There's kind of more title cards. It talks about their ensuing lawsuit with Napster, resulting in a fan backlash, and then there's sort of montage of press interviews, and it talks about many people in the rock press questioning Metallica's future. And I did want to insert this clip, but where they do the James's one word to span our career, and he kind of just trails off.
85 million records, 22 years. I think it's 11 albums and various official releases. One word.
Oh my God. One word to span our career.
Yeah, he can't, and they go into a great montage after that, but he can't really figure it out.
The montage, I think, would be hard to do even if things were in a good spot.
Of course, yeah. I think these dudes did a really good job at setting up the beginning of this documentary to show you not only, they sold over 90 million albums and they're this giant band, but they're also kind of giving you a preview of all this pressure that was on top of them, with the Napster thing, going into this new album that they people aren't digging and stuff. So it was a good setup to go back in time at the beginning of the filming of this documentary.
Yeah, and they're kind of jumping around too. So it is a cool kind of subtle filmmaking where you're kind of disjointed a little bit. You're kind of uneasy already. Mm-hmm. I do like that montage they play after where they kind of just span together a bunch of footage of Seek and Destroy.
Oh, that's great. I love it.
It's just as a huge fan of the band, it's just really fun to see that.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And then I will say, man, I love the fist, like the Saint Anger fist, but the title screen comes on and it's that bound angel.
Yeah, I dig it.
I love that.
It's really cool.
I love
the
that
artwork's
image.
great.
God, it's so good.
Oh, yeah.
So
and
then they... yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, to drive in more of all the shit they're dealing with, the next thing you see is MTV News talking about Jason quitting the band.
After 14 years of headbanging, Metallica bassist Jason Newsted has quit the band, citing, quote, private and personal reasons and the physical damage that I've done to myself over the years while playing the music I love. Metallica's management had no comment when asked by MTV News if there's a replacement waiting in the wings, but the band is still scheduled to begin recording a new album this spring.
So this is them taking this right to the beginning. So the titles, we've been sort of introduced. Now we're going to January 2001, and it's Jason leaving. Mm-hmm. And he's decided to leave, and then they're meeting at the Ritz-Carlton, and we see old Phil Towle for the first time.
Here he is, old Phil.
And I guess he was hired because he had worked with Rage Against the Machine, which was another Q Prime band. But it's notable that he didn't succeed in keeping them together.
Yeah, way to go, Phil.
Fucking
You know
bright
what?
ass yellow sweater,
You know what?
Phil.
I'll bet he never told Rage Against the Machine to zone it.
Zone it.
Zone it.
Using zone as a verb.
I know.
Oh man, you get into a bind, you find yourself in a pickle, zone it.
Let me tell you something, brothers. Zone it.
Oh man, you're driving and it's raining and you get your car stuck in a little bit of mud, zone it.
Zone it, bro.
Zone it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh god.
So
All
Phil
right.
and his beautiful sweater show up,
Oh god.
and they immediately just dive into therapy sessions and stuff. And now let me say something about not necessarily Phil, but I think it's, and as we've talked about, it's obviously overall, I think Phil did help them a lot. Like James calls him an angel, this and that. But I mean, as much
You're my angel in a yellow sweater. You're my yellow sweater angel.
you're my angel.
Yellow sweater tonight.
You say yellow sweater tonight?
Yeah.
Hey, that's lyric gold right there, man.
That sweater is so yellow and it's so big on him. He's
You
such a
should-
tiny man.
You should write that lyric on a Post-it note. Hang on to it.
Okay, hold on, doing it right now.
Okay.
Yellow, you're my yellow sweater tonight. Okay, got it.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, but I think just, getting right into it, I remember when I first watched this the very first time, I was, you're kind of like let down, like, oh, fuck, Metallica is in therapy?
You're right.
It's kind of like when you get to the scene of Jason talking about, like,
How lame it is.
yeah, it's like, we've gone through all this, the biggest metal band ever, and we can't deal with this?
You know what's interesting about that is that when I was younger, when this movie came out, I
Yeah.
resonated more with Jason's point. Like, I resonated with it. But, now that I'm a bit older and kind of seen a little bit more life, it's not aging well with me, that sentiment of like,
Right.
oh, it's just a little macho for me. It's like, dude, I don't care how big a band you are or how heavy Creeping Death is. It doesn't mean that you guys don't need help. Like,
Right,
it doesn't
yeah.
mean you can't ask for help from people.
Well, and maybe at the time, Jason not having kids, like, he had more time if it was possible to sit down and deal with this stuff, where these dudes aren't just like glued to Metallica and that's it. They've got families, they've got kids, they've got other
Right.
business ventures, this and that. So maybe for Jason, it was kind of like, what? I can take care of this. Why can't you guys?
Yeah, and I share his frustration as a fan when I think about why couldn't him and James just talk? Like,
Right.
James says my only way to love things is choke him to death, and Jason's saying
Yeah.
Echo Brain wasn't going to take away from Metallica. I love Metallica. It does seem, but when you really put it that simply and realize that they couldn't even really do that, it's like, yeah, dude, they needed some fucking help.
Yeah, and sometimes there's no shame in that. Like, you have to reach out and ask for help. I mean, there's no denying. Sometimes it's like, especially with and we know James going to rehab. It's like anybody that's dealt with any addiction, at a certain point, like, you can't do it by yourself. And these guys couldn't do it by themselves. They needed good old yellow oversized sweater wearing Phil to join the club.
Well, and I may be biased here, but whatever. But I've been in and out of therapy for 14 years, so
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of it, and I think it's saved my life. And most of my friends are in sort of active therapy, so
Yeah, that's awesome.
just as I get older, I just resonate more with it. Phil, in this Ritz-Carlton scene, Phil does say something that I think is super spot on. So I try to give Phil some love, because I generally don't feel very good about Phil, to be honest with you.
Right.
But he said, they're talking about, like, should we have the cameras in here while we're trying to do therapy, and is that good? And Phil says, I don't think the question is whether or not the cameras are going to be in play, but whether or not you're free enough to risk being seen by other people.
Right. Yeah.
And I was watching it last night, and I was like, you know what, man? He kind of nailed that.
That's a good point. Yellow sweater aside, that's a good point, Phil.
Yeah, I mean, his decision to wear that sweater, abysmal. One should question whether or not he should be a free man in society. But that was a pretty insightful comment.
I thought the yellow kind of matched part of the color scheme of the Reload album, so I figured I'd be cool with you guys.
The yellow really brings out the urine in the Reload cover.
Exactly.
Then we get footage of the gear being loaded into the Presidio, which is pretty interesting to me that they wanted to go do that. It looks pretty shitty.
It's like an old military base in the San Francisco area, in the Presidio area of San Francisco. I mean, I get when Bob Rock's talking about like, let's get out of a conventional studio, let's try something new. I totally get that. I think it's really cool that they wanted to experiment and, go into this new place that, that was out of their comfort zone, as if they weren't uncomfortable enough.
I was about to say, like any other record, great. Let's rattle some bones. But I think them being in a more comfortable setting might have been better for them.
I wonder though if at the time they loaded into Presidio if HQ wasn't really fully done and set up as a studio, because
I don't think it was, because I don't think they really got to work on that until he went to rehab.
Right, exactly. And at one point, Kirk he talks about we're going to now what's known as HQ, like they maybe recently acquired that building.
Well, they do, like their first day of working at HQ is somewhere in this documentary. I think it's when they're doing the Unnamed Feeling.
Yeah,
and it's at post rehab. So let's see. James kind of is being interviewed, and he's talking about how this is Saint Anger is the first time they all came in with no riffs, no titles, no ideas, and they're all talking about that being tied to ego. It's all kind of like kind of therapy talk, but
it is crazy though to think like before this load-in day happened. At a certain point,
they didn't have any material.
Well, at a certain point, like months, years before this, they decide on the next record, let's not do our normal formula.
Well, I wonder when they decided to do it, because
that's what I'm wondering.
Because they toured. I mean, my first time seeing them was in 2000, Summer Sanitarium tour,
right?
And maybe they were just otherwise taking a break from writing.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean,
because they had done "I Disappear" and "No Leaf Clover" and "Minus Human."
Yeah.
But other than that, there was no real new material.
I mean, I think right off the bat, you can see James is very uncomfortable with this new way of approaching songs. At this point, he's spent, 20 years with one method of writing songs. Like, I write the riffs, I write the lyrics, me and Lars get together, we arrange the songs, and then we give it to the other guys, and then we go from there.
Yeah, it is interesting. What I find really interesting is in this first scene, like sort of, it's quote-unquote day one of them at the Presidio, and James is already playing a down-tuned guitar in C sharp. Like it was maybe a bit premeditated. Well, I know they already started like detuning live for certain things, but not that low. No. This is like kind of the new metal System of a Down Korn type tuning. So they definitely decided beforehand we're going to adapt to this era of music right now. Yeah, and I think this is a black area. Like if you're looking at the canvas, this is a black area where they've never really talked about conscious decisions to sound that way. And I think they haven't talked about it on purpose. Smart move. Yeah, well, I think so too. Then this is where we got James on his hot rod, and or whatever that thing is he's on. He's talking about how weird it is being a famous guy, and that's him trying to be unfamous. Right. Yeah, I like that scene because you can tell he's kind of conflicted because it's like, he's kind of talking about how noticeable this car is that he's driving and stuff like that. He even looks over into the car and like waves to him. Yeah, this is me trying not to be famous, driving this crazy car with cameras filming me. Driving this loud ass hot rod, this beatnik that is louder than any car on the road. I'm trying to be unfamous. Yeah, it's basically screaming, "Look at me, pay me attention." It totally is. What's weird is when they're playing this kind of first chuggy riff. It really is kind of indicative that they did not have much material because James is actually singing the lyrics to Fuel. I know, it's amazing.
I got some bad news. We're gonna have to
change the lyrics.
Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire. And Lars is like, bad news. And James says, we're gonna have to change the lyrics. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's one of the first glimpses of him maybe being a little disinterested. He's not far off from going to rehab at this point, and it's just day one. It's day one, and he's already just kind of like checked out. Yeah, he does seem kind of spaced out and checked out. Oh yeah. I love when it cuts to, I think it's ridiculous, but I do love it, when it cuts to this clip of Lars laying on his couch. Yeah. He's going through this kind of thing of like when this art piece, when is it done? When is a song really done? All this kind of annoying shit. I'm just like, dude,
I think he's trying to justify like the crap that they're making at Presidio.
I think it's partly that, Lars is so fascinating to me because he's just partly full of shit and he's partly really kind of oddly sincere,
Yeah.
He's talking about art as his escape, and part of me like rolls my eyes. Part of me is like, I think it's just him being himself,
Yeah,
but
of course
it is kind of cringy.
Mm-hmm. It is cringy, and then you hear like, "Daddy."
And he's like, "Yeah, sweetie." I think that's a nice moment.
Yeah,
You kind of see the family man Lars in his own personal home trying to make sense of the art he's making that he's confused about, and the art hanging on his wall that he's also confused about. Because remember, he's saying like, "Yeah, why aren't there more lines up here?" And
right, yeah,
like even later at his art show or when he's selling his art, he's like, "I've never even been this close to this one." It's like
those are in your fucking house.
He seems to have sort of confusion about that too. It's a lostness, dude. I'm telling you, lostness permeates this shit.
Yeah,
in every member.
Well, and I think also too, it is a very common thing as an artist of any kind to maybe look back on anything you've worked on and say, well, did I finish that? Is it done? Even though I put it out, or could I have done things differently or things like that. Maybe it's just that kind of constant questioning of like, could it have been better?
Right. But these are the guys who made Creeping Death and Blackened. Like, these dudes have come as close to perfection as you can get.
Right.
So
well, they were also
weird.
making Saint Anger.
That's what I'm saying. It's just so weird to see them. Like, watching this film, it's as if they've never created anything before that record. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like,
you
have to remind yourself, like, these are the dudes who wrote and played "And Justice for All."
I know.
It just
Battery and Orion.
It doesn't add up. It's like, this doesn't make any fucking sense.
Well, at this point early in the movie, Bob Rock is talking about, like in that vibe of getting back in the garage and just four guys in a room and this and that. And it sounds like that. It sounds like four guys that haven't made a record yet.
Well, and through some of that jamming at this point in the film, some kind of monster riff kind of emerges, and it's James kind of sitting there saying, "There's a lot of these cool moments I like a lot." I know our friend Paul Milk appreciates this too, but they're listening to some of maybe they jammed for a few hours, and James is like, "I don't hear anything special in this," and Kirk agrees.
Yeah,
but then Bob kind of like hones in on the bum 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 bum, and you can see James kind of get a little excited.
Yeah, it lights up a little bit.
And James is like, "Oh yeah, that is pretty cool," And
yeah, I think what Bob did is he momentarily snapped him out of like the funk he was in for the day. He was already kind of down low, like, oh, this sucks. I'm not into it. I'm not hearing anything. And Bob kind of like snapped him out of it just for a moment where he heard it and go, oh, okay.
Well, which is
that is a little cool.
And it's one of the many sort of, unsung heroic parts of the job of a producer is to be a therapist, sort of manage people's feelings and get people feeling excited about what they're creating.
Hey, no need for you, Phil. We have Bob Rock.
Yeah, let Bob Rock wear that goddamn yellow sweater. You
think it was Phil's idea to turn the snares off on the snare drum?
That was probably what he wrote on that little slip of paper that he gave James.
Yeah.
Hey, let's make the snares sound terrible for this one.
I don't know what that drum is called because I'm not a musician, but the one that normally goes, Kah, can you make it sound like king?
Oh, and by the way, that'll be $40,000.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Invoices in the mail. But in between, there's these two clips of them finally starting to get excited about some kind of monster. And I actually wanted to insert this clip of Bob talking about the rules they used to have.
You guys had some rules about that before. Frankly, I don't give a fuck. I'm tired of arguing. You couldn't talk about his lyrics, therefore he couldn't talk about your drumming.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And you and him did the solos, so you weren't allowed to comment on the solos. Do you know what I mean? There was rules. Are you telling me that those boundaries are gone now?
It's a really interesting scene because Bob sort of like puts his hand in his face in his hands, and James is like, "Is this bringing up memories for you?" And Bob's like, if you guys are going to be open and like all of you writing lyrics together, he's like, you guys just used to have a lot of rules. Like only Kirk and Lars could talk about the solos. Only James and Jason and Bob could talk about the bass.
Right,
and
exactly.
No one was allowed to write lyrics but James. No one's allowed to talk about drums but Lars. And you can just
this is 3 studio records and a cover record that over the course of 10 years Bob's been working with them.
That's going to say you can see the journey of that.
Yeah, so to him he's like, what the fuck? I've been these have been your rules forever, and now you're just going to get rid of them?
But like a great producer, he's kind of like putting the brakes on for a second, saying, "Really?" But then when that's the decision of the team, he moves forward. And in the next scene, they're all kind of trying to figure out a vocal hook for some kind of monster, and it's really Bob that hones in on these are the eyes of fum fum fum.
Yeah.
And it's Bob saying, "What is this song to you? What is this?" And he pulls it out of James,
Yeah, totally.
And they talk about like building a Frankenstein, and he says, "This is the top of my head that's flat."
Yeah, totally.
These are the bolts in my neck.
That was, to me, that was a really cool moment, and it almost made me wish for something different, because that is what he pulled out at Hetfield to kind of get him some focus on the lyric writing and the rhythm he was singing and all that stuff and the melody. And I feel like that if nobody else was writing lyrics and it was just Bob and James in there, I feel like it could have even been better. Like, that's probably what he did on the Black Album. It's what he did on Load and Reload. Those two worked together. James just with the lyrics, James came with the melodies, and it was them two, Bob pulling stuff out of him, getting stuff maybe out of him that he didn't know was in there, and that's a glimpse of that right here.
Yeah, and you can just see, it's really clear in not only this documentary, but also in any kind of Metallica footage that we've seen. Like, James is the engine of that band. He's the sort of spiritual, emotional engine. So seeing him kind of start to light up at this part of the film is really exciting to see. It's like kind of the first time you feel good watching the movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Is when you see that James is starting to feel good, because he sort of sets the emotional tone. Like, don't you think? Like,
he sets it from the get go. I mean,
right?
He comes in just like, head down, shoulders, forward, just not in a good spot,
And I will say, and having been in a lot of bands, just like you have, and sometimes I've maybe been more of that energy, but a lot of times, I'm not a frontman type, and it makes me feel more for the other guys, because that is a lot. Like, when you're sort of at the mercy of another person's emotional life.
Yeah, for sure.
That can be a lot to deal with in a band. So it kind of gives me empathy for the other dudes too, even Lars,
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I love that he also, essentially he pulls out the title of the song from James.
Yeah, it's great. It's very skillful producing, and I love that they captured that.
Yeah. What's interesting is after this record was done and all that stuff, I remember the band kind of talking about like our time with Bob was kind of done, like maybe like we overstayed our welcome with him, kind of thing. But I don't know, man. I think Bob had an equal hand in saving this band that Phil did.
100% agree.
I don't think that it would have been a mistake to maybe do Death Magnetic with Bob Rock.
I don't think Bob's time with Metallica is done. I mean, I think that
I hope not.
I think he may make a record with them again in the future.
Maybe a Greg Fidelman Bob Rock co-production.
Yeah, maybe Greg can I don't know what kind of politics are in that world as much. Maybe Paul can talk about this when we do our Greg episode in a few weeks. But now that he's produced like Metallica's Hardwired to Self-Destruct, I don't know if he's going to go back to just engineering.
I doubt. No, I meant like just co-producing, or maybe they
co-produce it. Yeah,
do like half the, or even do half the record with Bob, or half with Greg, or maybe that the continuity wouldn't be great. But I would love to see Bob Rock back in the studio with these guys.
Yeah, I would too. Like, let's just make that the official position of Metal Up Your Podcast.
And maybe if you want to get out of your comfort zone again, let's go to fucking Hawaii.
You know that song, "Let's Go to Fucking Hawaii"?
Let's go to fucking Hawaii. Get drunk in the sun. I wanna lay on a Waikiki. Get a tan on my bun. Running from the rain, thousands on the run. Making like the rich, heading for the fun. Let's go to fucking Tahiti. Lounge on the beach.
Right before they take a 2-week break, I thought this was an interesting scene. They're coming right out of a jam, and Lars and Kirk are both pretty excited. Like, Lars is like, how fucking awesome is it that we can just go in there and bang that out? And Kirk agrees, and James is looking real not happy about it. And Lars says, you don't seem very psyched about what's going on.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to what we were saying a second ago. Just like, they're excited, he's bummed, and him being bummed takes away from their excitement,
Oh, of course it does. I mean, as guys that have been in bands and played with a lot of different artists, I mean, there can be one person in the group that is the Debbie Downer, and it makes you guys lose excitement for what you just worked on and what you were just excited
but the fact that
about.
it's James, though, like I bet if James and Lars are stoked about something, but Robert isn't, I bet they don't give a shit. You know,
They're like,
they're
hey,
like,
man.
we're doing this anyway. Sorry,
Yeah, just so you know.
we gave you $1 million like 20 years ago. Shut up. So they go on a 2-week vacation. They come back. Everyone's all hugging, and this is when James talks about how he killed 2 bears, and he says he drank. He says he drank vodka and worked on lyrics.
Yeah. I found this part to be pretty sad.
It's really sad.
It's James kind of admitting that he shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have gone on that trip. He missed his son's fucking birthday.
I don't know, sometimes I'm a real ass about it and just coming and saying, oh, by the way, I'm going to Russia for 2 weeks right here, and what?
Right.
Yeah, I'm getting better at that, and because that was the most I missed my family ever,
Right.
And it was, Castor's first birthday I missed.
Right.
And it was, well, of course, we had a little vodka to Castor, did a little shot for him and everything. But I would have loved to have been able to get a hold of home.
We see him then tracking the song Temptation, which I know we have listeners who really like that song. Man, it's pretty rough for me. It's pretty rough.
I'm not into that one. I think I gave it a 1 or 2 on our Santa Ana episode.
And what I thought was an interesting content move on the documentary is they're playing the unfortunately horrific chorus where he's saying, "Oh, I can't say no, I can't say no," and they show this montage of not only James drinking but like naked chicks and.
I think it's just like the producers are hammering in that excessive lifestyle kind of thing that Hetfield, was known for. The whole band was known for, really, but that thing that like he's always done. It's like that crazy lifestyle of booze and chicks and like on the road and all that stuff. And
But they're not showing like cocaine and shit. They're just showing booze and chicks. And so it makes me just wonder if that's, James famously in rehab for alcohol and other addictions. It's like,
right, yeah.
And he actually even says later, he talks about how like, I'm waking up in a bed with a different person I don't even know. And
yeah,
it's just interesting that they were sort of that that's where sort of the bravery of this documentary really comes to light, because him being that honest about that, like, his family's going to see that shit, and
Yeah, I love the vulnerability of this documentary, especially the world of Hetfield in this thing. I've told you this before. I've probably even mentioned on the show. After watching this, literally every time, I have more and more respect for James Hetfield. I mean, this guy, not only like put the biggest band in the world on hold, but he also like stood up to his best friend like he never had before, and he took some control back that he felt he lost.
Well, there's that. Yeah, it's interesting. I've been really inspired by it, and it's helped me on the road.
Yeah,
we talked about this on our Pirate Satellite interview, but I've struggled with those things. Maybe not in quite that extravagant a way,
right.
But I remember watching that. I watched that documentary for the first time while I was on a tour, like on a grueling 8-week van club tour. And
yeah.
I remember we were kind of poking fun at it and laughing at it, and it was sort of horrific to see my favorite band that vulnerable. But I remember immediately taking away from it, like even on the rest of that tour, feeling differently about sort of how I was conducting myself on that tour.
Yeah, totally, man. No, I'm with you. I was actually thinking about that before we started recording this episode. Like, like James makes a really good point when he's talking about, the days of drinking as opposed to the days of sobriety, where he's like, with drinking and getting messed up and waking up to some random person every day, he's like, the result is always the same. He's like,
right.
now that I don't have that, he's like, I'm surprised by life. Things are going well every day. I think new things are happening. Like it's the same result every time I would do this shit.
And we've jumped ahead a little bit, but that's one of my favorite moments on the whole documentary is when he says,
yeah, me too.
He says, being sober means I'm clear and I'm present, and it's exciting because I have no idea what's going to happen, and I'm present for it.
Yeah, like I said, dude, it just makes me respect that person even more than I already ever did.
Yeah, me too. So a little bit before that, we kind of go back to Jason, and this is what this is. you know, you and I being really big Jason fans, as well as Rob fans, everyone knows that. We don't have to do too many disclaimers now, but we get introduced to Echo Brain, and they don't sound great. Like it definitely doesn't.
I remember checking it out a long time ago, and I was not into it. It's just
but like
not,
the little bit
not
that
my style of music.
But you think that the little bit that they do put in the film would be like the best of it, and it's like it's just this weird kind of college rock.
Here's what I think, and this is just a theory. I wonder if, because at no point do you see them playing live and there's vocals. It's just like instrumental stuff. I wonder if it was a music licensing thing where, I mean, they're at a weird spot with Jason. If it was like, hey, if you use our music in this film, you have to pay us. I wonder if they got away with just using short clips of instrumental parts where they didn't actually have. I could be totally wrong. It was just interesting. Like, why would you not play a great chorus from one of their songs or something?
I know. Like, why not just really let us know how scary it was for James by playing us their barn burner?
It is so weird to see the footage of them playing live, and it's like kind of college rocky, and then you see Newsted back on the drum riser like he's still in Metallica, like headbanging and stuff.
I know, dude. It's so weird. How do you go? You know, how do you go from Moscow, you know, and from those types of shows to, I don't know, to clubs again? But he talks about how he makes a point to say it's one of the projects he'd been working on for years. And so he describes it as finally coming to fruition.
Right, yeah.
And
well, he probably had to be very careful about working on it before, because I'm assuming he knew a bit of James's feelings about side projects and stuff,
right.
and so he probably had to kind of do it like, you know, a little under the radar. So it took him maybe longer.
Right, and we kind of covered this extensively on our Jason Newsted episode. If you're just now listening and you haven't checked those out, go back and check the Jason Newsted episode out. But it cuts again to James talking about how Jason needed to get his creativity out, and he didn't understand it at the time. He didn't want anyone to leave, and the sort of famous, the only way I learned how to love things was to choke him to death. And it's all very sad and frustrating to see. It is
sad. The one thing that really kind of like almost chokes me up a little bit is when he says, he's like, I didn't want Jason to love that more than Metallica.
On my side of that was, I didn't want him to enjoy that more than Metallica. I didn't want anyone to leave Metallica. I didn't want to feel that we weren't enough or something like that. And it was through I guess the way I learned how to love things was just to choke them to death. You know, don't go anywhere, don't leave, you know, you have to stay here.
All right, so we're at day 39. It's interesting now kind of knowing Saint Anger, the record, a little more than I used to, because we obviously had to pour through it for the episode, but they're working on the My World lyrics. And James is talking kind of extensively with Phil about he's feeling guilty about not being inspired, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And Phil's kind of chasing that, and like, well, what's the fear? What are you afraid of letting people down? And I made a note because it made me wonder, like, you know, maybe he's not inspired because the song's not great.
Maybe the song sucks.
Like, and My Word was it's one of my standout tracks. And by standout tracks, I mean, I think I gave it like a 4 out of 10. But
yeah,
I think that might have been the problem too, you know?
I'm sure it was that. It was just the whole situation. I mean, how do you get inspired when there's a guy in a Cosby sweater trying to like pull emotions out of you and writing lyrics for you, and your band is writing lyrics for you, and you're just like in the middle of all this, you know? No shit, you weren't inspired.
Well, and they're doing like in between work weeks, they're doing whole weeks of just therapy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's just, man, it's such an intense time. There is kind of a funny moment though later where James is Kirk is like rocking out, and James is trying to get a hold of Kirk. He's like, Kirk,
yeah. Kirk,
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 Kirk, Kirk,
Kirk, Kirk, Kirk, Kirk, Kirk,
Kirk. Yes.
Kirk.
James is trying to talk to you.
Sorry, man.
And this is where shit starts to really crank up. Kirk shows him one of his riffs, which this is a bummer because, you know, it probably takes a lot for Kirk to be like, hey guys, I got a riff. Remember, I'm the guy who wrote Enter Sandman. So anyway, here's this riff. So Kirk goes, check out this riff, but it's when Lars is deciding to try to play like super weird drums.
Oh man, I mean,
so Kirk's riff is just fucking dead in the water because Lars is trying to be like avant-garde drummer.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, this is where he's trying to like. They get in that argument. James is in a shit mood, and they get in the argument about like James is like, why don't you play it? What does he say? Because he knows Lars hates the word regular. He's like, why don't you play it more straightforward or something?
But James even says like, hey, I'm trying not to say stock or whatever because I know it bugs you.
Right. Yeah.
Every time I watch this scene, I feel like James is trying to be cool.
I feel like there's multiple scenes where Lars blows up on him, and James is trying to be cool, and this is still pre-rehab too. Yeah.
This is so silly. You're just sitting there going, I'm in a really pissy mood, and
I fucking told you straight up that I was.
Right.
And what are you trying to do?
I'm not trying to do fucking shit. You're just sitting there being a complete dick.
You're really helping matters. You're really good at that. I was straight up with you, and I told you I'm in a shit mood, and what have you been doing? Fucking picking at me all night.
Come on, guys. We got better things to do. All right?
Yeah, I do. I do.
So it's pretty obvious that the vibe. This is probably one of the most, like, one of the biggest conflicts of the film.
Oh yeah.
The vibe gets real weird.
I feel like this is where like the shit starts to get real between the two of them and their long relationship, and like the bent up frustration and anger that they probably hold towards each other, and resentment, and that battle of control and stuff.
Right. Well, yeah. And then James. Then James slams the door that doesn't slam because he slams it and it's kind of opens and.
Man, he slammed it that hard, man. Those overalls give him sheer power.
Oh, dude, those overalls are like. Fucking like a talisman for strength. He puts on those overalls and he can move mountains.
That's true, man. He was
it's
in
like
his
Thor's hammer.
Like hot rod rockabilly phase at this point in the band's history.
Yeah,
kind of slick hair. He's getting some new tattoos. He's in his hot rod. He's got his overalls on. Slamming doors that won't slam.
That's actually the whole reason he did go to rehab, is because he slammed that door and he's like, door didn't slam right.
Dang it, I gotta seek help for this.
Well, so he slams the door, and then we get the MTV News, segment that James has entered rehab for alcoholism and other addictions. I remember seeing this and being surprised.
Oh yeah, me too. Because it's something. This is all pre-iPhones. I had a flip phone. You weren't looking.
All I had was goddamn terrible MTV News.
Exactly, and it was, and that was still a point in MTV where it was like a lot of reality shows, but like there was still these big news segments on artists that you like. And I remember thinking like, what? Like, I knew that he drank and blah, 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 but no, not in my Hetfield.
My Jimmy James Sr. Jr.
Oh, Junior, Senior, where are you?
It was pretty scary though. And like, it's interesting to remember kind of not knowing what was up. And it's interesting to see the film and see like, they didn't know either, they didn't know where he was. They didn't know how long he would be there.
Totally.
We find out through the film, they put a little title card up that, Metallica will not play the Presidio again. So that kind of marks the end of the Presidio sessions.
And I think they still had the lease on it for another, like the first 3 months he was in rehab.
They waited, but they didn't know how long James would be gone.
Right, yeah. That had to have been like, tough for the other guys in the band and like all the crew working on the record and stuff, like waiting around for 3 months, nothing's going on. All of a sudden it's like, we got to get out of this place now.
And I know a lot of fans are real honed in on what's been dubbed the Presidio sessions.
Yeah.
Who contend that a lot of the material created there is not what ended up on Saint Anger, and there's this sort of body of interesting work that they want to see come out that might be part of potential bonus features on a Saint Anger deluxe box set. Blah blah blah. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. I know that from what I heard in the film, I did not like any of it.
I'm sure there's some moments in there, cool riffs, this and that. I don't know the answer to this, but I'd just be curious to know, like, were there even completed songs, like, you know what I mean, that they would be proud of? Temptation, they started there, yeah.
I think Temptation is the only unreleased song from the film that you can hear in its entirety.
You're right, yeah.
Let's see, other unreleased tracks in the film, and I don't know how any of these go, but Shadow of the Cross, Dead Kennedy Rolls, More Than This, Whipping Boy. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how to distinguish those. I know that when Lars screams fuck into the SM7, that's the music he's screaming fucking to is a song that's not on Saint Anger.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and as you see in the whole film, I mean, they, like when Lars talks about the funnel, you know, of all these ideas to his dad, it's like, so these Presidio sessions, it was the same shit. It was them in a room jamming for hours and then just cutting and pasting all these little things in Pro Tools to make parts, to make transitions, to make a chorus or a bridge. So, I mean, you know, until when and if they ever want to release that crap, I mean, I can't imagine they ever will, honestly. I honestly don't think they ever will.
I don't either. So people,
and I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I'm cool like that. I'm cool like that.
I don't have the curiosity. We've had fans of the podcast reach out to us and talk about this stuff, and give us more info on it. But it's just not something to me as a Metallica fan that I'm like dying to hear. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Like, I would like to hear if they've got secret songs that they recorded for Puppets or Justice they didn't put on the record and no one's ever heard. You know, things like that.
I agree. Well, here's the bad news. I mean, it's just straight up bad news. The best of all of that shit, truly, the best of it was Saint Anger. And,
yeah, totally.
And this is so. I don't want to go mining those seedy depths anytime soon because we got the best of it, and it's not that great.
Yeah, totally. I like this next scene with Lars and old Torben hanging out on the Lars's new property.
Well, it's actually really fascinating, and it's actually another moment where
I think it's a beautiful property that my son bought. It says in Northern California. I will build his log cabin out of walking sticks on this property one day soon.
Torben, are you a fan of Marin County? Is that an area of town you like?
It's so gorgeous up there. I take trips on my carpet around the county, and sometimes I'll stop by and see James's property and Kirk's property and his ranch when he's riding his horses, and it's so beautiful.
Let me ask you a question. Is there any sort of altitude issue when you're on your carpet and you're up in sort of the hills of Marin County? Is there an altitude issue?
No, not usually. I can't. Damn it. Hang on, I got this. No, usually I keep a spare tank of oxygen inside my beard, so if I'm at these high altitudes, it's much easier to not delete my journey, and I can keep hovering to my carpet.
Oh, a tank of oxygen in your beard. You must have a very strong back, Torben.
Oh, it's very. All the tennis is very much helped.
Wow. Yeah, thank you, Torben.
You're welcome.
It is a good scene though, where Phil, this sort of golem to me, also impresses me though because he's talking about. Isn't it nice? Because Torben's talking about Metallica's place in metal history very succinctly. He's talking about the new wave of British heavy metal, and he's like, Lars came in and had this vision, and they were making music that people hadn't heard before, and he was saying, Metallica has a place in all this. And Phil goes, man, Lars, how does it feel to like have your dad have so much perspective on who you are and your life's work?
Lars gets so uncomfortable.
So
here.
does Torben, though. Torben's
and they both do.
What would you say in private?
To who?
To anybody without him here. Say it. I mean, what would it be?
Well, I've already said it to you countless times.
Well, have you said it to him? What is it that you brought it up? I didn't bring it up. What is it you feel you've said that you're not saying now?
I think maybe in some ways some of the
to me that's
fear of status quo comes a little bit from this direction over here. I think that there's nothing worse than when I have to go to him and play the new record and know there's something on there that sucks, and he can see right through that in 2.5 seconds flat.
They're both Torben's like leaning down like he's looking at an ant. He's like leaning as far. He starts
like stretching his leg and stuff.
Oh, believe me, he's pretending to stretch because he doesn't know how to just.
I don't think you realize how sore my right leg was when climbing those hills.
Dude, they both just got super awkward, and it's beautiful, but it's also, again, kind of sad that...
Well, there's that whole thing with Lars that we've seen a lot, in stuff that he, very much so seeks his dad's approval.
Yeah, and he says as much, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even standing there out in that field, I mean, he's like, Phil, I got to give it to old Phil here. He pulls it out of him. He's like, well, what would you say if your dad wasn't here?
Right. It's actually kind of a cool growing moment, I think, for them.
Yeah, Phil, you go, man.
Man, you rock on, weirdo Phil. Fucking weirdo Phil Towel.
He's also got some pretty sweet pairs of shorts in this documentary too.
Oh, dude, you can't wear an oversized yellow sweater without a killer pair of khaki shorts. It's just not going to happen, dude.
I might go as Phil Towel for Halloween next year. Just confuse the hell out of all my friends that aren't Metallica fans. What are you supposed to be? I'm Phil Towel. Who's that? Watch this documentary.
Yeah, I'm Phil Towel, of course. What do you mean, who am I? Jesus.
And all I'm going to do is go to my friend's Halloween party and just like put Post-it notes everywhere.
Dude, I'm the angel of Metallica.
Zone it.
I'm zoning it.
I'm the angel of creeping death.
You're just wearing a fucking sign that says zone, or you're just carrying like a little dry erase board writing zone it in various rooms.
Exactly.
Speaking of zoning it, this is our infamous Delete Zat scene where they play they play like the echo chamber song, and it's clearly terrible. And it's weird because Lars is like, wow, this is one we're really excited about, and this is the one that Cliff Bernstein says should open the record.
Yeah, and Torben's like,
that may be, but I really think
I
not.
don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. And he said, he uses a phrase that I've used a lot about Saint Anger, where I say, it just doesn't cut it. And Torben says that exact sentence, and he's right.
He's so right, yeah.
It only makes sense if this band exists in a vacuum and hasn't made the records they've already made. When you look at the things his son did, that shit doesn't fucking cut it. And I mean,
you can like Saint Anger all you want whether you've like grown to like it or you liked it originally or you're trying to justify it and you feel like you have to like it. Regardless of what you feel about this record, if you put this next to the Black Album, Justice, Puppets, all that shit, like it doesn't cut it.
Fucking get real.
We're not trying to talk shit here. We're not trying to be assholes. We're just saying what I'm saying. It doesn't cut it. Torben, we hear you. We got it.
We're saying what I'm saying. Hello, me. We're saying what I'm saying.
Hello, David. I love your segment in this documentary.
I don't think I'll ever hear Sweating Bullets quite differently again after Paw Paw's stirring rendition.
God, the stirringest.
So then we realize they flash it up there. James has been away for 3 months.
Yeah.
Which is a really long time to not know if the frontman of the biggest band in the world is coming back. I'm sure everyone was real freaked.
This is like half the time he's actually gone.
Oh, yeah, they have a lot more to go. And Bob says that he knows a friend who knows where James is and says that he doesn't see James doing anything for 6 more months. And this is when Lars kind of famously says he's prepared for the worst.
Yeah, totally.
And then we get one of my favorite scenes of the whole documentary, which is Kirk on his ranch, and he's like riding a horse. He's like sort of awkwardly bouncing on the horse. Like,
oh yeah,
Kirk's not a cowboy.
Cowboy Kirk, man.
Cowboy
Kirk. Sure about that? Cowboy Kirk. Listen, I as kind of silly it is to see Kirk like on the ranch in a cowboy hat and riding a horse. I do like that he kind of goes into this whole thing about being out there and being away from like any worry of the band and I'm not anywhere where people can like talk to me. He's just all by himself out there.
Well, he says a sentence that really struck me where he says, "I come out here to remember what's real."
Yeah.
And that was eye-opening for me. Like, I thought that was really astute of him.
Yeah, me too.
Kirk is, for all the sort of strange, odd behavior he displays in a lot of ways in this band, he actually comes through in a lot of ways sort of like spiritually that impresses me.
Agreed. I was going to say Kirk is definitely kind of like the Zen character of Metallica. Like, I mean, I think he's got a seat on that rug at Torben's. To float around. But I mean, it's true. Like, even when he talks about going out in the ocean and surfing and stuff like that, that he found something that, is more important than drugs and partying and this and that. It's the same thing when he's out on his ranch and he's just talking about recognizing what's real. It's like, I guess for him, it probably puts things in perspective. There's this huge giant band that is Metallica. But when I come out here, like, that's not important anymore. This is like real shit. This is just regular life. And, just being out in nature.
Yeah, well, and it's just his role in the band, we had a listener write in a few weeks ago that, man, I wish I could remember who it was. I'm sorry that I can't, but I think it was Alex Finney, our listener Alex Finney, talking about Kirk's sort of relationship in between James and Lars and being sort of a neutralizing force that otherwise they might have kind of ripped each other apart, but he kind of holds it together a little bit. I think he may be a little underappreciated in that regard, and you can kind of see,
right.
You can kind of see some of that in this scene, as silly as it is to see him with a fucking cowboy hat on a goddamn Clydesdale, bouncing around the mountains of his ranch. It is an interesting moment, and especially juxtaposed, and I think they intentionally did this, right? So you've got Kirk at his ranch talking some Zen shit, talking about what's real, right?
Yeah.
Then you got the dun dun dun. The most insane part of the documentary to me, the Mustaine interview.
Have you ever thought what I've been through?
I think I've had an awareness of the pain I caused you.
That's not what I said.
Okay.
Do you have any idea
of what I put you through?
No. What I went through. I mean, people hate me because of you. You know, I walk down the street and I hear some piece of shit say, Metallica at me, and they do that to taunt me. I mean, when I would hear Metallica on the radio, I would be like, God, I have to turn this off because I just keep thinking, I fucked up.
Right.
I've been waiting for this day for a long time. You know, and by no means is it done because somebody else very important is not here.
Right.
Now, I watched this movie like you. I don't know if I've watched it 15 or 20 times, but definitely maybe around 10 or 12.
Yeah.
This scene never is very redeeming for me, other than for Lars. I think I understand why Dave was bummed that it came out because
Hang on, let me get ready for this real quick. All right, continue, please.
He does not come off very well in this, and I know he has said that it was edited to make him appear unfavorable, which is definitely possible, but they didn't put the fucking words into his mouth.
No, they did not. I mean, there are parts of things that he says that I can definitely understand. Like, okay, I've been through this shit. You don't know how frustrating it is to be the guy who got kicked out of Metallica and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, man, that's on you.
Well, first of all, it's his fault. The nicest moment is when he says, do I wish that you guys would have told me to go to AA? He's like, yeah. And do I wish that I could have another chance? He said, I would give anything for that. All right.
Yeah.
Now that's the right thing to say. Now when
that's the right thing to say.
When he's talking about, do you know what it's like being in my shoes or whatever? And Lars is surprisingly doing a lot of listening, which I know isn't easy. It isn't easy for anyone, including me. And a lot of like empathy. He's like, I understand, but David's saying crazy stuff. He's like, I spent my whole life feeling like a piece of shit, and I'm number 2. And meanwhile, they're showing the title card saying Megadeth has sold over 15 million records.
Yeah.
He's like, he's like, how do you think everything I do backfires? Am I happy being number 2? No. I'm like, first of all, motherfucker,
15 million albums.
Well, number 1, that's no joke. Number 2, you're not number 2, homie. Sorry. You're not the number 2 metal band. But it's just a strange exposition on the poisoning of the mind of these rock stars.
Totally.
And he's like, Lars, have you considered what it's like to walk in my shoes?
Yeah, what I actually went through.
I'm like, God, Dave, shut up.
I mean, there's a part of me that there's a bit of sympathy I have for him for what he went through. At the same time, like we said, it's like, dude, like it was your fault. I mean, yeah, maybe they handled it poorly and drove you across the country in a U-Haul before firing you, but it's his fault. It's something that he's hung on to for way too long that, and a lot of that had to do with, I mean, obviously if everyone likes Megadeth and has researched them, I mean, that dude went through some hard-ass drug years, really hard.
Yeah.
So no joke he never dealt with this stuff, so it's no wonder, here we are in the early 2000s and he's still hanging on to it.
Well, and you just touched on something that I think is sort of part of like a key to this film is what we're really seeing is a bunch of adult, grown men who are still kind of like, they never really had to mature beyond 19 and 20 when they started touring. For those of you who've toured or have seen this movie, touring is a bit of there's an arrested development that can happen with your maturity because everything's taken care of. You can drink whenever you want. You can drink during your job. In fact, you can drink during your job, and afterwards, people will praise you for it.
Oh, yes, they definitely will.
And I think what a lot of what this film sort of sadly exposes, on both sides of it, even with Lars, is just sort of the arrested development of these dudes who are totally struggling with things that people struggle with, sort of the disarray and poisoning of relationships through years of lack of communication. But it's just at the ego level. I mean, for this dude to talk about how everything he does backfires. You know what I think all the time when I see him say that? I think, what a disrespectful thing to say to your fans.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think we know now that Dave has gotten past this stuff, and maybe he looks back on his career fondly, and it's like, okay, that wasn't a backfire. But at the time, I mean, he was clearly still thick in this stuff and thinking about it all the time. I mean, he was only 40 years old, like. And he's still hanging on to this stuff. Like,
dude, he tweets about Metallica. Do you follow him on Twitter?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
He tweets about Metallica all the time.
He does. I do enjoy on Twitter when he says the words "my little Danish friend."
Yeah. I remember I remember the day we dug a hole in the ground and talked about smoking hash.
Yeah, I would say at one I think endearing moment during this Mustaine section is when he is talking about, like, I haven't been able to, anytime I've ever tried to talk about this over the years, I'm talking to Lars from Metallica.
Right.
He's like, I'm not talking to my little Danish friend.
Right.
And that's the one point where I feel some sympathy where I'm like, like maybe he has reached out. Maybe he has tried to deal with this. I don't know. I wasn't there. But, and you can see it in Lars's face. He kind of looks at him like, oh, fuck. Yeah, shit, we've never done this,
Right.
But, at the end of the day, you get to a certain age, you're an adult, and you got some baggage you're holding on to. Like, you got to do what you have to do to deal with it.
Yeah, I think so, too. And he's still not even satisfied. The segment ends with him saying,
well, it's not even over yet because someone else important isn't here.
Yeah, he's in rehab, motherfucker.
Yeah.
He can't talk to you about what happened 100,000 fucking years ago. Dude, they were all damaged. Maybe not Lars, but James, definitely like a damaged kid.
Yeah, for sure.
He didn't know how to deal with that shit. His dad leaving and his mom dying and all that shit. It's like they were young, dude. They didn't deal with it well. They're alcoholics.
Yes.
Come on.
They are.
All right, we can move on from this. This is another one of my favorite scenes where Lars, Bob, and Kurt go to see Echo Brain.
I love this scene because it is like the most humbling scene for Lars.
Oh, he can't believe. He's like, I thought they were going to play in front of like 15 drunks, and then I'm realizing it's kind of a bigger deal. And they go, and it's kind of packed, but it's not like everyone's going crazy.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, the people are there to not see Echo Brain. They're there to see Jason Newsted from Metallica.
Well, and they probably heard that fucking Metallica, but the other members of Metallica are going to be there with a goddamn film crew.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, actually, that had to have been set up because you can't just walk into a club and start filming without posting shit.
No, dude. And it's really weird because then they go backstage and Jason splits without saying bye, which I know they were having troubles, but it doesn't sound like him to do that.
Here's what I noticed even today when watching it. The other two dudes in the band look like they're trying to act right there.
Yeah, I agree.
They're like, hey, where's Jason? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Maybe he split, man. Like they just like, they look like bad actors right there.
Yeah, it's jive.
It's either that or they were just like super nervous that, oh shit, it's Kirk and Lars from Metallica and there's a film crew behind them.
No, I'm with you. It's jive. It's some jive bullshit. I will say that one of the funniest lines is like, so they go back out front. They're like, oh, there's Kessel, there's Todd, there's Steve.
No,
Steve works at the studio, and Lars goes,
Bob Rock's amazing.
And Bob's like, yeah, he works with, and so Bob Rock's keep naming people, and Lars goes, I'm sure they're all here, Bob. And Lars is talking about how he feels like a loser, how Jason's the future and Metallica's the past. I'm like, dude, are you kidding me, Echo Brain?
You're
What?
still in Metallica.
Yeah,
If
it
you
is like
could
you
go
want to
back
shake
and-
him. Yeah, it's like you want to shake him
Yeah.
and be like, dude, you're in fucking Metallica.
or if you can go back in time, even if that was their last record and they broke up, you were still in Metallica.
Dude.
If you could just go back in time and be like, hey man, so the Sand and Anger thing, trust me, like most of the fans aren't going to really dig it. You're going to end up not really playing those songs live anymore, but you're going to make two great records called Death Magnetic and Hardwired to Self-Destruct. Don't worry about it. Everything's going to be fine.
Or like, dude, at the very least, you're the guy who played the drums on Mama Said.
Exactly.
So, but at this point, James has been away for 6 months. So they're spinning, dude. They're freaked out. And this is where we find out that Kirk has talked to James, which is a shock to Lars.
Yeah.
And Kirk says, you know, he's in a good place, but he feels like he can't talk to you about the space he needs. And Lars is feeling super disrespected. James writes a note to a letter to the new edition of So What magazine.
Yeah.
And then it's finally April 12th, 2002, and James is back at HQ. He's grumpy about the filming.
I mean, I can only imagine. I mean, he's just got out of months and months of rehab and rebuilding his family and all this stuff, and all of a sudden he walks in the studio and there's fucking cameras in his face.
He's like, what's the camera doing here? They're like, dude, we've been filming every day since you've been gone. Fuck you.
Yeah. Wait till you see the Echo-Brain footage. But I can't. I couldn't imagine like being through what he went through, and you know everything in rehab is all about just like crushing ego, and it's just
for
like,
sure.
And him walking in going, oh shit, this is essentially what I should be against right now.
Well, and this is really where the documentary, and it's a bummer because we're gonna have to wrap it up here in a few minutes, but this is kind of where the documentary starts to take on a sort of more transcendent light for me.
Yeah.
Is all this stuff that happens when James comes back. And he's talking about being uncomfortable, but he's going to move forward. You know, they kind of get him back on with the vision of like, no, we've got a really interesting film to make. And
right.
but he's talking about how Metallica's been this beast that sucked him into it. And,
right.
and another great moment from Phil is Phil says, you know, for a while you were the keeper of that beast, which I thought was just another home run from Phil.
Yeah, he's right. Totally right. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, he obviously let it happen for so long. I mean, man, do we like Phil now? Shit,
I don't know. Again, it could all just be the favorable editing.
Yeah, it's true.
But
maybe so.
I did have a different perspective on it last night when I watched it. And this is one of the more important takeaways for me here before we kind of wrap it up for the part one. But they talk about, James is saying that he's talking about balance, and he's saying that the priority has always been the collective, but he's saying that now the priority needs to be the individual, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
And Lars is saying, no, like the priority is that we're a band called Metallica, and unless the band decides to focus on one person, like you needed to go to rehab, or, you know, they talk about Kirk in the 90s got a little squirrely. They had to kind of focus on Kirk. He's like, but until then, like it's, and here's what sort of my epiphany was that, you know, James is obviously the spiritual center of the band, but Lars is more practical and pragmatic.
He is, yeah.
And it's kind of what makes them so great together. But in this scene, you really see that they're really on two separate planes.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that's where a lot of the problems are.
Yeah, to me it also too, like I felt like Lars didn't really have like, he wants his friend to be fine. He's just anxious and impatient to get this machine rolling again, you know?
Yeah, because he doesn't share the same, like Lars had a pretty good childhood. He really did.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well loved, well taken care of, well educated, right?
I gave him all the best things.
Right. Thank goodness for you, Torben. Whereas James had kind of a nightmare childhood.
Oh yeah.
And so you're seeing James, who kind of comes from this place of fear, and Lars comes from this place of kind of like, he's trying to be empathetic, but he's kind of like, look, get over it. Like, we'll make a balance.
Yeah.
Find a balance in your life so we can come back to the band and work.
The one thing that bums me out about Lars in this scene is that, like, I feel like he really does have no sympathy for James, no empathy. He's just like, okay, cool, you're back. Let's just keep going now. Like, he doesn't even want to try to learn about what James just went through.
Yeah, it is the kind of like, it is his cringe. The cringe I feel for him is sort of his inability to kind of slow down and sit in it.
Yeah,
which is really
sure.
what James needed. It seems like to me.
Yeah. But he just gets, you know, he at one point like tells James, like, I think you're just self-absorbed and all this stuff, and it's like, whoa, dude, like James has this whole new lease on life, and he's trying to readapt himself into the world of Metallica, and at the same time focusing on his sobriety and rebuilding his family and all this stuff. And Lars is just like, I don't give a shit. Are you better now? Let's keep going, you know?
Well, and this is when they start talking about James only wants to work from noon to 4. He's kind of put these creative boundaries for himself. And this is when Lars is just starting to just squirm.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think James takes it a little far where he's saying, you guys can't even listen to what we've done.
Yeah, I mean, on one end, that totally is shitty. At the same time, he makes a decent point where he's just like, you know, I don't want you guys listening to all this stuff when I'm gone and making all these decisions, you know. It's a tough thing, man, because, like, these other dudes have been waiting around for 6+ months for James to come back, and then he comes back and all these rules, and at the same time, he needs those rules. I mean, all these things he's coming forward with, this new sense of control and how he has to do things in order to operate in Metallica again. I respect it too, because it's like he's not only trying to, you know, I'm trying to figure out a good way to say this. He's not only trying to like rebuild what is been built up and broken with Metallica. He's doing the same thing with his family. He's doing the same thing with his own self.
Right.
So he's in a tough ass spot, you know.
Everyone is, dude. Because even Bob.
Oh yeah.
You know, Bob's wanting to work too. And Bob even says, he's like, you know, if we're only going to work from 12 to 4, I respect it, but we're going to have to work harder. And then immediately
Right.
James is like, I'm fearful of that. What do you mean? And Bob's just saying, look, if you're willing to go deep really quick, then we can do this in 4-hour spurts. But
yeah, totally.
You've made records, I've made records. You know, sometimes it takes a while to get to a place where you're ready to really start laying shit down.
I don't think I've ever been in the studio for 4 hours or less.
Well, especially when they're doing it this way where they have no pre-production. They're basically having to write the record in the studio. And so Bob, as a producer, is going, oh, shit, like we have 4 hours a day to write the song, pre-pro the song, and get great performances of the song.
Yeah.
He's just like, and he's thinking about that deadline. And he's like, we're going to have to work a lot harder.
Well, as a producer, he obviously sees the bigger picture here.
Yeah. It's so fascinating.
It's so fascinating. Like you feel for everyone on both sides. I think the only time I get frustrated with Lars is when and he's just showing like just nothing but frustration towards James, and James is trying so hard just to be like, okay. You can see him at certain points like tapping his fingers on the table and taking deep breaths.
Yeah.
Like he's trying not to explode at Lars, and Lars is just like back into his normal thing.
Well, the last kind of scene that we'll sort of end on is, it's exciting because it's kind of they're landing on Frantic. They're all in the control room writing lyrics. Kirk ends up writing the Lifestyle Determines My Death Style, Rising Tide That Pushes the Other Side. Bob lands on the hook. Beep, 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 bop, beep, bop, beep, bop. Oh my God, I looked for that clip again today on YouTube, but it's just gone. Like Bob Rock's had people wipe it off the internet.
It doesn't work.
You did one great thing. You went,
Yay.
you did this one syncopated thing. Do the whole verse like that.
But they start to land on the song, right? Like they kind of start to finally get it to work, and then Bob goes, just FYI, it's 3:45. And it's just palpable that like James's new infrastructure of having to leave at 4 is definitely hindering them capitalizing on an exciting moment in the studio.
Oh, by the way, it's 3:45.
I gotta get rolling, guys. Sorry.
And as we know, those are the moments in the studio where like you don't want to stop.
No, that's
like,
when
keep this rolling.
Because that's like catching fucking lightning in a bottle. Like you have to. And Bob, as a producer, it's got to be so fucking frustrating. And so James sticks to his guns and leaves and goes and sees his daughter do ballet, and it's actually a really nice moment.
Yeah.
But then they're having a conversation the next day, and James is talking about, you know, I don't want you guys, I feel guilty when I want to leave, like you guys are all talking about it. And this is when we get the sort of infamous fuck you scene, the fuck scene.
Yeah. Fuck.
I don't want to end up like Jason, okay? I don't want to be pushed away. I don't want it to happen twice. Let's do it, and let's fucking do it full on, or let's not do it at all. Fuck. See? Fuck. Fuck! Fuck!
It's a low blow, with Lars saying he doesn't want to end up like Jason. I felt like that was kind of a low blow.
Totally, man. No, this part, this is where I really feel like Lars just is being such a dick to him. I understand his frustration.
I see both sides of it. Yeah.
I just feel like as somebody, or let me say this: I think what it kind of does show is that prior to James going to rehab, those two dudes maybe never got real over the years. Like Lars even says, like I feel like I don't even know you before this.
I feel like I never knew you. Yeah,
I never knew you. Yeah,
that always struck me as like, him trying to say the meanest thing.
Yeah, possibly.
Or
I mean,
I think it might be. I think that might be true too. That James hid behind alcohol and.
Well, I mean, dude, literally from day one of the band starting, like they were fucking drinking like crazy and partying and playing metal and touring and chicks and all that stuff,
Right.
So, I mean, this is the first time that like James has had a clear head in 20 years in this band. So I can imagine, and Lars obviously isn't clean at this point, so he's also probably dealing with his own personal issues with James as a friend. Like, I just lost my buddy that I used to party with forever.
Well, we've mentioned it before, but it's Lars, the dude that's always sort of been in control of their destiny, for the first time being completely out of control.
Oh yeah. It's a very weird thing to see him feel out of control, and I think that's telling him like he's just pacing around that kitchen.
Well, and it's him not yet having the tools to deal with that kind of conflict.
Right. Yeah.
Like never really needing those tools, and so
yeah,
it's so fascinating. We got to see this on. I mean, it's like fucking here on camera, documented. That shit is no joke.
No joke at all. I love it.
I do too. And on this note, probably the climax of the film. We should bring it to a close.
Yeah, we definitely should, because we got a whole part 2 to do.
Well, we've got Rob's audition. We've got them working on the Unnamed Feeling. We have the infamous Kirk with the solos. We have the MTV Icon.
There's a lot of good stuff to come up. One of our favorite songs, Sweet Amber.
Oh boy.
Even we'll even get into some of the Napster stuff, because they'd even do a little montage on that. That was one thing I meant to point out earlier as we close this, is I love that they kind of do a montage on every member of the band.
Right.
They do like montages on important parts of the band's history, whether it's the Napster thing, the Jason thing. There are these little like 5-minute segments where they kind of go deep with each person. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and we've got James confronting Phil, and we, as we all know how the story does end, is the record comes out finally, and it's number 1 in like 100,000 countries. And
Wait, so do we not need to do a part 2 now?
Well, we're going to do a part 2 to sort of analyze, but hopefully everyone knows what happened with Metallica in 2003.
Yeah,
it was quite a long time ago.
God, that doesn't seem like a long time ago.
It really doesn't. It makes me
14 years ago.
It makes me feel really fucking old.
14 years ago. I wasn't even married to my wife yet. That's weird.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I hadn't even hit puberty yet.
I had no hair in my armpits.
I didn't even have hair on my butt yet.
I didn't have that gross neck hair yet.
Gross neck hair. Well, what happened is I'm losing all my hair upstairs, and I'm getting it all on my back and in my ears. And I told my wife...
What's my wife's name?
I told my wife, Meemaw, she had to pick it all out with tweezers.
I feel like it should be like Papa and Mama.
Well, I'll read it.
So I
dubbed thee Mama.
I dubbed thee Mama.
All right, thanks for listening. We're going to do part 2 next week. Just a lot to talk about. What can we say? So send us your thoughts, metalupyourpodcastshow@gmail.com. If you're lucky, we will read them on the next thing. Don't forget to go stop by iTunes, leave us that review so you can win shit. We are now
win
the
some
benevolent
good shit.
Givers of good Metallica swag that we will give you. Leave the positive review.
It's almost wintertime. You want that fucking Metallica blanket around your body.
Oh, you're going to be real cold come wintertime, okay?
Oh,
you're
yeah.
going to be real cold come wintertime.
Guess the way to warm up is leave us a review on iTunes and get that fucking blanket.
Oh, here's your 2 options. See, all right? You either freeze to death, see, all right?
Burr.
Or you get that Master of Puppets fleece that we're gonna send you, and you cover up your bones and your skin, and you get warm,
it's so
okay?
warm.
And you survive.
It's so warm. I love it.
You live to
It's
see
so
another
warm.
day. Yeah, it's really warm. It's super
I'm
warm.
I'm sweaty. I'm sweating.
What else should we say? Oh, you know what we should say? We should say sincere thank you to all of you who listen every week. We really do appreciate you all.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we love it. It's awesome.
We think about you all the time from far away.
One final thing I will throw out there that I'm really excited about is I'm currently in Mexico City right now, and I'm coming home. As you're listening to this, I came home yesterday. But the next good amount of episodes, we're actually going to be together, and we got some feedback about that this week through emails and stuff that, you know, the chemistry is better when we're in the same room.
Well, we're going to be definitely doing the last, you know, we're going to round off the year together at home at HQ1. So that is exciting.
It's very exciting, yeah.
We're going to do some kind of Monster Part 2. We're going to do our Greg Fiddleman episode with our friend Paul Moak. We're going to have our friend Tom Quee from Alpha Metallica on in December. We've got the prize giveaways for November and December. So it's all good shit. And we've got our 1-year anniversary show that we're planning in December also that we're going to do.
Yeah, more info soon.
TBA,
y'all.
The Black Album. All right.
Das Black Album, son.
Much love and peace to you all out there wherever you are. We do hope you're all well, and we will see you next week. Peace.
Adios.
If you were our advisor, what would you say? Then I would say delete that.